Hiya, welcome to Virus Films Part 2. So let's crack on. We've had number 10, Panic in the Streets, 9, Outbreak, 8, Carriers, 7, Wreck, American remake, Quarantine, and 6, The Amiga Man. It's just mentioned the Amiga Man that the virus is called the Plague in that, so again referencing the bubonic plague. I forget which century that was. Okay, so what have I got at number 5 here? It's what on the thumbnail on this when Gary I'm not on Facebook Foley did the thumbnail for this. We tried some different ones and then I kind of had a think and I thought, well, we've got to have a George Romero film in. Which one is the most suitable in the context of what we're talking about? And so the astute of you will recognise the character. I think it's Bub, the zombie who's trying to be trained from Dare the Dead, and that is my number 5 choice. Night of the Living Dead's a straight horror. We don't know why they raised from the dead. Dawn of the Dead and its remake, which is excellent as well, from 2004, Zack Snyder, is about surviving. They go in the shopping mall. It's about surviving the virus. But what's more interesting about Dare the Dead is they're in this underground bunker and military and scientists are trying to find a solution. And it's interesting, in these kind of films, there's always a conflict. There's always the military who tend to be arseholes, which is what happens in this. And then you've got the scientists who are trying to appeal to their sense, look, we can find a solution to this. As it turns out in Day of the Dead, the mad scientist, who's kind of like Frankenstein, I suppose, in the depths of the bunker, he's trying to train Bub. But what it turns out later, he's feeding him the remains of dead people. He actually feeds him the remains of one of the dead soldiers. That ends up kicking off at the end, and the head military guy gets his vocal cords ripped out and his screen goes up, which I've always loved. I always like Day of the Dead. It kind of gets forgotten, not forgotten about, but people obviously talk about Dawn of the Dead. And Dawn of the Dead is a classic, but Day of the Dead's the best sort of, the zombie thing is a virus and they're trying to find a solution to the virus. So I just got something stuck in my mouth. So that's number 5, Dare the Dead. Just quickly on the zombie thing, a recent film which is very good was Train to Busan, a Korean film, and a guy gets on the train and the virus spreads. At the start it brings a dead deer back to life, so I don't know if people, I can't remember if people die on the train somehow, but there's loads of zombies and they're kind of moving down the carriages to avoid the zombies. And it's that classic disaster movie thing. There's a guy there, you think he's a bit of an arsehole, but he ends up being heroic and character things shift. I think they're planning a Hollywood remake, but that's good. There's quite good depiction of the spread of virus, but it's a zombie film more than a virus film. Okay, so number 4, I've gone for like the most like highbrow intelligent film on this list, and that is The Andromeda Strain. I'm just going to get that up on my computer a sec. So The Andromeda Strain, I'm typing it in now. I should have done this before. There we go. So this film was based on a Michael Crichton book. It was a bestseller. I think it basically got Michael Crichton recognised as an author. Obviously, he wrote Jurassic Park and stuff like that. And he attracted a really big name director, Robert Wise. So Robert Wise is quite an interesting filmmaker, had a very varied career. But he had this foray into science fiction, and later on he directed the first Star Trek film, Star Trek The Motion Picture. He also directed The Haunting, a great horror film, Sound of Music, classic musical, West Side Story, co-directed, did a top boxing film, The Setup. So not an auteur, not sort of a signature style, but a very competent filmmaker. He won 2 Oscars and so on. So what's interesting about this is it just takes a really highbrow approach. There's an alien parasite virus, and 4 scientists basically go to a secret bunker and they try and investigate the source of it, the virus, and how to battle it. It contains no stars. You've got Arthur Hill in it, James Olsen. These are character actors you probably recognise. Actress called Kate Reid again. They're really the 4 scientists are really the main cast in this. But what's interesting about it is a very successful film at its time. I'm just looking at the box office here. Its budget was $6.5 million, and its box office is 12.4 million. So, you know, for a film of this nature, it's pretty popular. There's a great sequence in it when a pilot is flying the plane and the virus attacks his mask and eats his rubber mask, which I always found fascinating. It's got a really good sound design. So it's kind of like a race against time thriller, but it's done very slowly, and it just going through the whole process of trying to track it down. I think deliberately they haven't cast stars because that would maybe detract from the kind of serious nature of it. It's quite a long film, 130 minutes, so it takes its time, takes its pace, but it's a serious piece of science fiction looking at an alien parasite. It differs in that respect to like Invasion of Body Snatchers, which again would be a serious consideration on this list, but it's a science fiction film, but it's, you know, how much does the body snatcher virus thing play in it? Obviously a big point, but it's kind of a different thing. It's more like a great sci-fi or a sci-fi horror that. I think the 1978 remake probably explores the viral nature of it a little more. But anyway, that's my number 4 choice, the Andromeda Strain, 1971. Very highbrow, serious take on this. Okay, my next choice is a time travel film, but I've put this in because it's the ultimate track and trace film. And basically, you know, they want to find out where did the source of the virus come from, what was its spreading off point. And the film is 12 Monkeys. Okay, so this is from 1995, directed by Terry Gilliam. Watched it again recently. Didn't enjoy it quite as much as I did back in the day. I think Brad Pitt's performance isn't that great, but I still think it contains Bruce Willis's finest screen performance. I think the music's great. I think Gilliam brings his off-kilter sensibility to play, but puts it into something quite emotional. I think the end of this film is still genuinely moving. Basically, the Bruce Willis character is sent back from the future by scientists in the future to find the source of the virus that has destroyed, you know, mankind in the future. There's clips, various sequences where Bruce Willis is kind of outside in a desolate New York and so on, and we see the effects of this virus. He has to track down, he thinks it's Brad Pitt's character who runs this army of the 12 Monkeys. But it turns out it's not him, it's a guy who works in Brad Pitt's dad's lab, and that's played by David Prowse, the top character actor. I'm just going to go on there because I think I've just got that wrong. Just bear with me. I'm going in my machine. Yeah, he is actually the one who unleashes the virus. But what happens in the film is people think Willis is mad because he ends up in an insane asylum. Madeline Stone's character, the doctor, who doesn't believe him and thinks he's having delusions. But then she starts to believe him. But where the film is clever is that, you know, is she going mad as well? It kind of puts across, there's a bit where she ends up wearing a blonde wig because I've been to see Vertigo, a Hitchcock film, and it's just, it kind of plays into that. Are they mad, or is he really travelled from the future? It's based on a short film by Chris Marker called Le Jeté, which is actually told with photographic stills, which is really cool if you get to see that as well. Just looking at the cast list a sec. David Morse, sorry, not David Prowse. He's Darth Vader and the Green Cross Code Man. Sorry, yeah. David Prowse is tall. David Morse, sorry, is tall as well. Anyway, but what happens at the end, Bruce Willis is they're chasing David Morse's character through the airport, and throughout the film, Bruce Willis has a memory of seeing someone shot, and at the end of the film, it's actually him. His own self, his young self, is at the airport. He sees his future self. He's from the future running across the airport, and he gets shot, and it's really profound. The Madeline Stowe character goes into slow-mo, she's crying. But I think the main thing is he doesn't actually discover, although he is chasing the guy who's going to release the virus, the people in the future won't know who it is. And it's kind of like, the heart of it is that lack of control. The people in the future think by going in the past they can control their future, just the way that we think all right, if we stay indoors, if we, we use this app, we do this, maybe we can control this thing, and we're trying to. But as we've seen recently, with the second spike, it's really hard to control it. Because that's what's something interesting about this film. So, on one part, it's a time travel film, principally, but the virus element plays a big part towards the end. And that's why that's my third virus film. Number 2. This one is, people would argue maybe it's a zombie film, but people aren't dead in it, they get infected and go mad. But I think the opening of this film captures something of where we're at the moment, particularly politically, and the film is 28 Days Later. And made by Danny Boyle, early 2001 I think. What's interesting about this is the opening kind of mimics Day of the Triffids, in that the character's in hospital, he wakes up and he hasn't been infected by the virus, and there's the great scenes where he's wandering the streets of London, shot on digital video. But prior to that, it has the moment when the virus gets out, and some animal rights activists break into a laboratory, and they want to free a monkey or some monkeys. And there's a guy in the laboratory played by David Schneider, who's a kind of comic actor, does some day-to-day stuff like that. And he says, whatever you do, don't do that, because he knows what's in there. But what you've got there is animal rights activists, which are the kind of far left of politics, I suppose. And then what he is doing is very to the right. And they both come together, across the chasm, as it were, the centre ground, and, hell is unleashed. But what this film captures well is how society falls apart, I think, quickly. There's a classic bit where, they're travelling across country, like they're doing Terry Nation Survivors, like they're doing No Blade of Grass that I mentioned before, and they come across the military and Chris Eccleston, and they've actually gone mad and they try and rape, I think it's Naomi Harris, her character. Fortunately, Cillian Murphy's character, make sure that doesn't happen. The thing with this is when people get infected, they move really quickly, typically in zombie films, but I don't actually think this is a zombie film. Zombies move slowly, like The Walking Dead. But in this, when people get infected, they become mad, become rabid. Same thing approaching World War Z. And that makes it more exciting in a way. The fact it's shot on digital video, DV, gives it a certain look that's interesting. They made a sequel 28 weeks later, which is kind of a 6 out of 10 film, but it's worth seeing. It's kind of in that, the quarantining areas, the military, not the insane ones. They're trying to do a better job, and they're trying to get back to the new normal, which is what we're trying to do, whenever that'll happen. But this film's interesting in that it does that survival thing, about finding a safe haven, and the main characters are coming across different situations or trying to band together. To try and get a safety. I think there's a bit where someone gets infected, the blood drops from an animal onto their eye, and they go mad. I've not seen it for a while, but I think it's a great film. It's definitely a modern classic, and that's my number 2 choice in the virus stakes. So that brings us to number 1. I know there was something else I was going to talk about regarding 28 Days Later. And I'm hoping it'll come to me. That was it. There's a film called The Girl with All the Gifts. Different take on it, but there's a virus, there's kind of zombie-like people. There's a Glenn Close character who's a bit of a mad doctor. Again, they're trying to have a safe enclave. They're experimenting on the zombie child, as it were. And they're trying to find a solution to the problem. And that it's got similarities in its look and feel with 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. Okay, there's other films with viruses in, like Doomsday, Mad Max, we're not sure what the virus is. There's various ones. I'll just have a look down my list if there's any other points I was going to cover, and I think I've covered most of them. So that brings us to number 1. Let's just go back through, back to number 10, we had Panic in the Streets. Number 9, Outbreak. Number 8, Carriers. 7, Wreck. 6, The Omega Man. 5, Day of the Dead. 4, The Andromeda Strain. 3, 12 Monkeys. And 2, 28 Days Later. So what brings me to number 1? If I'm honest, this isn't my favourite film out of these lists. But this, when I watched it again recently, which I'm sure a lot of people had, it was basically like watching a documentary. Apart from the panic buying sequences and society collapsing being more extreme for cinematic effect, all the things we're talking about at the moment it had in, and that film is Steven Soderbergh's Contagion, which I think is from 2011. So this had things like track and trace. Kate Winslet's doctor character is trying to go around places where the virus is flared up. When someone has come into contact with another person who's got it, they're contacted, you shouldn't leave the house, blah, blah. The virus, the patient, first patient, they discovered Gwyneth Paltrow has been out in Hong Kong. Obviously, the virus has come from China. It's got that other element. Matt Damon's trying to survive. He's trying to keep his daughter safe until there's a vaccine. They do find a vaccine at the end. You've got the World Health Organization, as represented by Marion Cotillard. You've got the American sort of health division, Lawrence Fishburne. You've got not that we've had mass graves. We have got mass graves, but people can't go to funerals. There's panic buying. People have bog roll about water. All this thing we've been seeing. Basically, Soderbergh uses his multicast thing. With he has different kind of colour schemes, filters he uses a lot. He did it in a film called Traffic. So you know where you are geographically in the story. But what I've forgotten about this film, and when I watched it the second time, and I think it's like an important thing, is one of the things that's come out is recently, and this predicts, is that as human population grows, it encroaches into areas where it shouldn't, because it deforests forest areas, and that brings it close to wildlife that carry viruses that we wouldn't normally come into contact with. And that's the theory of this. Obviously, the conspiracy theory is that the Wuhan flu has been developed in a lab. The other theory is it's come in a Chinese wet market and come from a bat, i.e. The bat has somehow come into contact, it's infected, has somehow come into contact with other food source, pangolin, something like that. People have gone away and eaten it. Yeah, you should be eating in that, but anyway, that's another discussion. That person's become infected, so on and so on. The same thing happened with swine flu. Overproduction of pigs kept in bad areas, they get infected by something else, that gets into our food supply, we get infected. I actually went to Mexico shortly after the swine flu epidemic out there, and I remember they had masks on at the airport, but we didn't, and the hotels were quite weren't as populated, but it was fine. But it was a warning. They've had SARS. Obviously, COVID can develop into SARS. MERS is it. Mexican swine flu. We had foot and mouth disease here, and it's all to do with basically how animals are transported, how they're kept, and how much humans encroach on to habitats where we normally wouldn't, and those have diseases and viruses in. The AIDS virus was believed to, come from monkeys, but in some remote jungle. But obviously humans went into there and somehow got in contact with it. So what happens at the end of this, which is really cool, is all the way through the film they're trying to trace day one, the first point of contact. And there's a great sequence at the end. You basically got some JCBs digging up some area. They're going into a habitat area where they normally haven't. There's a bat there. It's eating a banana, I think. Then the banana drops onto the ground. I think they've got pigs there that they're fattening up to eat, as it were. We are. The pig eats a banana. It gets infected. It ends up on the restaurant table. well, on the chef's table where he prepares it. And then there's a photograph sequence at the end where Gwyneth Paltrow goes to thank the chef. She's been eating at a restaurant where this pig has been prepared, and she goes to thank the chef, and she got her arm around. I can't remember if they have like a sort of a friendly kiss, or she's got her arm around him. But basically, he's got infected, but I'm guessing he's asymptomatic. But he passes it on to her, and then she gets on the plane, and then that's it, and so that's the day one, first point of contact, and he does that really well. So that's like the number one. That's the best virus film. I would say 28 Days Later, 12 Monkeys, Day of the Dead, Omega Man. These are the most entertaining ones. But Contagion basically looks at, in 2011, it looks at what a global pandemic might look like, and yeah, he was right. This is what it looks like. We're in it. So thanks for watching that. Apologies for my going onto my computer and looking at stuff. I should have set it up beforehand, but we'll get better as we go along. There's just one thing I was going to finish on. If I had to pick a film, a 0, basically above Contagion, it would be a science fiction film from 1973. And it's not about a virus, but it's about the greatest viral threat to our planet, because it's about overpopulation, it's about human beings, and that is Soylent Green. So in Soylent Green, Charlton Heston again, this is part of his great sci-fi trilogy, Planet of the Apes, Omega Man, Soylent Green. And Soylent Green is investigating, someone's been murdered, he's a cop, but what it turns out is that old people are dying. When they're dead, they're getting turned into food, and that's being used to feed a population. What it captures is what overpopulation looks like. Yeah, but the biggest virus on this planet is human beings. It's not bats, it's not pigs, other food sources, it's us. It's us cutting down areas we shouldn't. It's us using resources, running stuff down. We've created the situation we're in at the moment. We've created the virus effectively by there being too much of us and living our globalised world. And there we go. So Soylent Green is a film that depicts a virus really well, and that is human beings. Thank you.